All the good seats are taken.
I know.
Bad students are in the back.
Hey, Gino, how are you?
Hey, man.
Doing
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor.
Why are we sitting in the back of it?
I'm the bad student, so I start.
It's a long walk.
All right. We can move on. We can move
Well,
on.
you know what, I mean, it's like, there's times when there's like 3 hour, 4 or 5 hour meetings.
Go back and sit. This would be the big journey.
Is that fine?
I said,
So
we asked girls,
what's the proposal on the table?
show you that.
Is this for the designated camping space? I'm just asking because we just sent out communication from BDK where now yes. So we're
So, after the test, and we don't know, we think, and it's up for a question.
we
There you go.
we have just, I'm gonna say roughly 10 to 12 each other. Mostly camping. I don't know if I can answer that, you know. I mean, our contact with them is mostly Howard Street and Queen the case was frustrating. But the other and I love 240 jurisdictions, but just straight off. Is I thought it went down. Look at my and see what they were looking at the page. And then other 17 questions for things I have to.
Really?
Yeah. Redundant. As previously mentioned, I'm gonna re-ask this. You know, it's all strategic planning. So that's what you SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, threats, analysis on demographics, which was the easy one. Statistics, see the census rate grow.
Right through this doorway and it's passing all the way to the left there. You're welcome.
Yeah, but then we've done what's called SNEEP analysis, which is social, technology, ecological, economic environment.
It is.
Reanalyze it. Break it down.
So this is, when did they
Social,
move?
what's going on in the city, when there's police department, demographic, cultural, technology.
Yeah, at least they can get that.
It's just, it's absolutely.
Wow, that's, so
So
what is the rule?
Yeah, SWOT analysis.
So because you asked her, I'm sorry.
Well, did they throw in the promise adult beverages and hors d'oeuvres afterwards?
Well, I got to check this in.
Right now.
Come dressed it.
That was the way that I attempted to incentivize her to join
I
me
say,
for this.
look at it, right? I go back to Kim.
Yeah,
You asked first.
Yeah.
I'll get fed.
you will.
And you're.
I'll take it. You get a
contact.
I just need a truck.
Oh, for
truck
four.
Are they the same pump?
I said,
Not the long one.
And
This is a leaf thing. I'm sure it's all big old pond.
Colin continues to do
What a contact?
Almost got
how you need to be, and I was like, oh, you need it, huh?
If you can build a contact, we use them under duck blind. Duck blind. Duck
I'm
blind.
sure.
Like I told you.
Yeah. I always had to sneak one truck bed. So.
at least that.
Everybody's.
Yeah, they just threw their hands up and went home.
That's the agenda adjourned.
That's it. We're
That
out.
truck bed, big trucks.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, the
no,
ones that crossed the police department last year, they last all season long.
No.
Yeah, that was.
No, and I.
there's a small little like Main Street across from the city park.
Did see that. It's also mixed in with a bunch of crafts.
Sure, it's like a function thing, which is- Yeah.
Are we looking at email it or you?
I don't think I have one sense.
Carol just was kind of on board.
Clean it up.
So what do you get when
And
you?
he happened to find his driver, I was gonna leave him a door hanger,
Place.
and he was out in front, so. Oh, here, I have it.
Like that.
I don't know if this
How
is,
long have we stopped?
It's been a while. Especially.
I don't know if this
And
is.
the light is on.
I'm sure it is.
I mean, it looks pretty daunting. If the purple has it's visualized.
Maybe it has something to do with,
Or my sister.
what's required and what's optional,
Already.
but I'm not sure.
Which
Which is good.
Yeah.
Just so you know,
Oh, yeah.
the one downside of.
Oh, of course, yeah, he put this together. I know he knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is I was.
I'm not out of there. Yeah, well, glad to help you.
What about the post office?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I know what you're saying. We would have been before the parking meter.
He's next door to that. It's
Just because
his
one wasn't
house,
requiring it.
and then the dentist's office, and then next to him is his fire.
They go, but that, there's a huge pond right in the first house.
Yeah.
That was all from the-
Were you at the
That's not the
negotiations
one.
in New York?
From that last-
I was not, I think our editor, Emma, was.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't go there?
No.
What's your?
Oh, really?
Oh, sure.
Let's get this party started, Tracy.
Yeah, I'll be going to knock on the door. I'm gonna turn that on. Reach over here. Only because it's like stuffy and.
Contract negotiations, right? Get into it.
Yeah, they are.
You should just walk across the front of the.
Hello.
Walk right.
Should I start? Yeah, I'm sure that would
Well,
work.
you know,
We're buying a car, fourth edition.
Oh,
but now,
So it's this little one, it has DVD player in it.
I never
So we're sitting at Duke Crowd.
toured that facility.
How long it takes to get
Oh,
there.
yes.
And pretty soon here goes the kids.
Way more capacity now.
Doing that Shrink down.
Oh,
thing.
yeah, what-
They're
are they
back.
walking down the
Yeah.
stairs?
Floor is just like, oh.
Your kids were doing that?
Yeah, they were just out there because they're like, don't hang out in here. So they're just back and forth, back and forth.
Driving you crazy from a distance.
And then pretty soon,
Really?
you can tell the whole fun thing in a way, like, this is taking forever.
Yeah, that's gotta be the most grueling process ever. We're finding.
Did you meet with John?
Yeah.
Okay, now.
I was there,
Conversation.
No big changes.
Strikes greater understanding.
Well, it's like, see what their car
And we're
is,
gonna-
Livermore or something.
And they have the post,
He
post.
said,
You can just
Walk in, okay.
That's it, let's go.
This is why, unfortunately, I
a bunch of places for
but, yeah.
30-minute parking, so
Duke Crowd.
3 in front of
You'll
Bill,
just
3
break your crowd. And so I was just calling them up.
Deli and
That's all the third time.
Right.
Trying to feed
Kind
them
of
all over the area.
That's what, yeah, I had
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
steady.
You're
Go,
all
you're
set and
more
done.
down that way
That's
too.
not
Okay,
what he said. Well, we can't.
I went to
He
everybody
said,
on
"Three
the
days
stand.
ago," you know,
Oh,
spoke
so
to
anyway, after that, I
They
was
said,
like,
I'd like to request this, do you just
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
I was
do you
like,
think it
call
would
them.
help? And
I basically
everybody's-
just show up and like, everything's right.
She was like, that's
Yeah.
for handicapped.
Sign the papers.
Didn't even
Drive it off
pay
the
until
lot.
later on. He just took the
I don't know how that works.
We need some music when we enter.
You- Yeah, it's a violin.
Well.
He's quick.
Okay, that's, but you know, I think it's. For the honor of this, I thought.
What the heck?
Yeah, my farmer teacher.
Nobody recognized you. Like, he's that guy out in the audience.
Bill, you have that single page too?
Lisa Baker explanation.
It's probably, oh, it's in that group there. Take care of that later.
Hopefully not.
So, are you presenting?
I'm just here to support. You know, it's been a big deal, so I figured, this is kind of information.
This should be it, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
If you have 10.
That's what it is.
We'll open the meeting of the Winter City Council on Tuesday, September 18th. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson?
Here.
Cowan?
Here.
Lauren? Here. New?
Here.
Mayor Biazzi?
Here.
Apologize for the late start tonight. We had a closed session and there was no information to report back out of closed session. So, Gino, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please
join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
Mayor and council, one modification to the agenda. We're going to pull discussion item number 3.
Okay.
So,
Okay. The motion.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, moving on, we have council staff comments. Councilmember Ryan, please.
All right.
We had a busy week.
It's a really busy week, it's gonna be long. For the week of September 3rd through 12th, I worked with several mayors to develop a presentation for the participants of the League of California Cities Annual Conference on forming a rural working task force within the League of Cities. September 8th, I attended the second annual Winners Healthcare Dinner on the Bridge. It was lovely and very well attended. On September 10th, I attended the final senior task force meeting with Dr. Sheila Allen. She'll be presenting the findings of the group in an upcoming council meeting. Also, I briefly attended the Chamber of Commerce mixer at the school board. Later, I attended the Hispanic Advisory Committee's ongoing planning for Festival de la Comunidad, which will be on Saturday, 9/29 from 4 to 11 p.m. Live music and carnitas, please, all are welcome. On September 12th through 14th, this is the meaty part, I attended the League of California Cities Conference in Long Beach. Also saw Robert there, right, from White Green Energy. While there, I was co-presenter for the Rural Working Group, which was well received. I participated as a board member of the Women's Caucus at the Women's Caucus reception. I was sworn in as an at-large director for the League of California Cities Board, a position Cecilia held when she was with the League. Being on the League Board of Directors gives me an opportunity to help the organization shape policy positions on significant issues facing California cities and bring the perspective of small and rural cities to these discussions. And it's an honor to serve. Lastly, I was a voting member and voted on 2 items. One was the repeal of California Food and Agricultural Code 11501.1 A and B, which is basically, it would remove state field pre-exemption of cities to regulate pesticides, specifically anticoagulant pesticides. So right now, a city can't say it wants to do that without violating this pre-exemption. This would restore local control to cities. The second asks the League to respond to the increasing vulnerability to local municipal authority, control revenue, and to prepare maybe a ballot measure or an amendment to strengthen local authority. Conference was great. I got home Friday and I'm still tired, Friday night. On 9/17, I met with City Manager John Donlevy to review this agenda. I also was able to take a tour of phase 3 of the Pewter Creek work, and it was amazing how much progress has been made. I'm really excited about it. I also on 9/17, I attended a board meeting for the WRA. I also attended a board meeting for Sigma. This page 2 now. Specifically, we talked about something Cecilia has on the governor's desk, AB 2348. It's a bill which supports flooding the rice fields to help waterfowl. And we also talked about Prop 3 support, asking cities to support Prop 3 because it invests in sustainable groundwater management in California. It also addresses efficiency in groundwater and has a lot of competitive grants. And then last night, I led a Hispanic Advisory Committee meeting to kind of go over final details, and it's going to be really a great celebration. I hope all can come. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. On Monday the 10th, attended a night meeting in Woodland of the Yellow County Transportation District Board of Directors. And one of the things the board did was passed a resolution opposing Proposition 6 on the ballot. That's a tax repeal initiative regarding Senate Bill 1. That imposed a tax on gasoline. And future voter approval of yes, if the taxes would be required if that is successful. The Transportation District is seeking, is voicing its opposition and I've encouraged the city manager to explore getting it on the agenda. On Tuesday, September 11th, I went to attended the Main Street Car Show here in Winners. Wednesday the 12th, went to a morning meeting of the Air Quality Management District Board of Directors. One of the significant topics covered was all the smoke that we have experienced as far as a what's called PM 2.5, which is a poison that gets in deep into your lungs. And some discussion about what can happen to minimize that in the future. And according to staff, the legislature is listening to people like Dwayne Chamberlain in terms of it makes more sense to manage the roads and the fire conditions and the hills and keep the fire down. Keep the fire from starting in the first place. So, they said the people in Sacramento are actually seriously considering it. So we'll see on that. And on Friday the 14th, I had a walking tour of the Beaver Creek project on Phase 3 with the city manager and the choir. It's really impressive how that's coming along. That's it.
Thank you.
Councilman Green.
On 9/6, I attended SACOG's Land Use and Natural Resources meeting. The majority of the discussion dealt with trying to meet our greenhouse gas emissions standard and how we were going to do it. On the 12th, I also went to the car show. On the 17th, it's a YOLO Habitat meeting, and at that meeting, we spent most of it was a budget meeting on figuring how we were going to fund everything that we have said that we're going to do. So we're working at getting all that money in so that we can do it. Also on the 17th, I met with Dan McGuire, talked about zoning and property availability in the downtown district. And then on 9/16 on Saturday, I worked at Creek Cleanup. And this morning I met with John Dunleavy to discuss tonight's agenda and some development measures. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Collins.
Yeah, thank you. On the 8th, I also attended the dinner on the bridge for Winners Healthcare, which was a really nice event. And I also attended Chamber Mixer at the school district and the car show. And on the 12th, I went down and attended the the signing of the mural at Lorenzo's Market, where they had all the kids that participated in painting that mural, sign their name to it. And it was a really nice little event. And I was really impressed by the kids that painted that mural. There's I think 12 or 13 of them, and they were all between 11 and 14 years old, between 7th grade and 10th grade, that painted that thing. And over half of them had no previous art experience, which surprised me because I figured it'd only be art kids out there doing it. A lot of them did it just because they wanted something to do for the summer, because they spent 6 weeks on that thing. And Valerie Whitworth that put that all together, she found a guy here in town that's a winter's residence. His name's Heine, and he is a professional muralist, and he helped them sketch it out and helped them directed these kids for 6 weeks in painting this thing. And when they did their little ceremony, each one of these kids spoke, and it wasn't just, hi, my name is so-and-so. They actually talked a little bit, each one of them, about the experience, and it was really pretty neat because they got a lot out of it. They made new friends, and they just are extremely proud of what they did. And I think it'd be nice if we did a little proclamation thing for them, got them all in here. But very impressive what they did. They want to do 1 or 2 of these every year, and you know, find different places to put them. But it was interesting to hear the whole story, and the kids got a lot out of it because they learned a lot of winter's history. Because when they were in the planning stages, they got Woody Friday and a couple other people with a lot of historical knowledge in town to come and talk to them and help them with finding photographs and stuff to duplicate. And so, pretty impressive deal. And they raised all the money to do it, buy all the paints and stuff. So, real nice little event they put together for those kids, and they're all real proud of what they did, and they should be. And then also on the 13th, I attended the EDAC committee meeting along with the mayor. And I think that's moving along pretty well. Thank you, John, for all your work on that. And then yesterday I met with the city manager to go over the agenda.
Thank you. Yes, as was reported already, I also attended the Winter's Healthcare second annual dinner on the bridge. It was a great event, raising money to help them get their building built. They're getting ready to start very soon, so we're looking forward to seeing that. On the 10th of September, I attended the Chamber Mixer. On the 11th, I attended the Classic Car Show downtown. On the 13th, the Economic Development Committee meeting. On the 14th, the Chamber Board meeting. And also on the 14th, along with the city manager, we met with Jeff Roberts from the CE group to talk about some future development here in town and just on the edge of town as well. I think it was a very productive discussion, trying to lay out some steps for our future. And on the 17th, I met with the city manager to go over the agenda. And later that evening on the 17th, I attended the Winters Peter Creek Park Committee meeting. And we also, after that meeting adjourned, went out and we had a tour of the phase 3 of the Creek project. And it's moving along very good. We look forward to seeing that finished in the next couple of weeks. That's all I have. So thank you, everybody. It sounds like it's been a very busy September so far. Thank you for all your hard work and your time putting in on this. Next up, we will have public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. If anyone would like to speak to an item not on the agenda, please come forward. Yes, come forward and state your name, please.
Of course. My name is Robert Bendorf. This one's on, right? Yeah. I'm part of the government affairs team for Y Green Energy Fund. We actually were on agenda tonight as item number 3, but I believe now it has been removed for kind of a later date. I just wanted to, while I was in the area, although I don't live far from here, I did want to take the opportunity to introduce myself. My understanding is maybe that item might come back here soon. I do hope so. But want to introduce myself, maybe provide a little bit of clarification, because it is kind of a confusing, unique situation in that the city of Winters is actually part of the Y Green PACE program and offering it to its residents actually through a county ran program. And essentially what happened in July is the county determined that they didn't want to manage the program for the 4 cities and the unincorporated residents anymore, and instead would join the statewide association that the other 300 plus associate members have joined to offer Y Green financing to its residents. So the items before you were not necessarily to join a new PACE program, but instead actually keep it available to the residents, because here in the next couple of weeks, the Board of Supervisors will elect to end that program and join the statewide program, which leaves the 4 cities kind of out, fish out of water in a sense. But I'm assuming we might be back soon. There is some legislation that's improving the program, which is great. Actually by, as I remember, Agriar Curry, which is great. So there are minor tweaks. Last year she was very involved in improving the PACE program. Took a lot of steps last year in legislation, and this year it's little minor tweaks, which are really great for the program to help homeowners continue to qualify for PACE financing and use Y Green to upgrade their properties when it comes to energy efficiency. So look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully really soon, so we can make sure there's no lapse in that availability to your residents. But I do want to take the opportunity to introduce myself. So thank you so much.
Thank you. For a lot of people out there may not know, we have a lot of acronyms that we throw out. So basically it's a way of, it's a low interest financing program for financing green energy improvements to your home. Something we'll look into in the future. Thank you very much. Anybody else that would like to speak tonight on the non-agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, a couple of items tonight. Item A are the minutes from the regular meeting held on September 4th. Item B is the acceptance and notice of completion that will be filed for the improvements and the rehabilitation of water well number 6. Item C is also final acceptance and notice of completion for the futsal court. We went in with a project budget of $100,000. There's just a little less than $14,000 that's left over. Just for the information, that $14,000 will simply shift into our park capital fund, under which any expenditures or anything like that are things that come back through the council. So it's not like the money's just going away. It'll stay in the park capital. Item D is an appointment to the Sacramento Yellow Mosquito Vector Control District of Mr. Gar House. Gar is joining us tonight. I think, Carol, did you go to the meeting today? Carol missed her only meeting that she was our representative. I guess it's a good thing that we've appointed Gar.
I did attend.
Okay. So anyway, above and beyond, started before he was ready. But Gar will be our appointed representative on the district, which is exciting. Item E is a proclamation of the City Council recognizing September 22nd through the 29th as Fall Prevention Awareness Week in the city. We've done the proclamation, we'll send it off to the appropriate folks. Item F is the street closure and amplified sound application for the homecoming pep rally for Winters High. And item G is the street closure and amplified sound permit application for Porch Fest, which will happen this coming Sunday. It should be great. And that's the consent calendar.
Thank you. We have several members of the council who's conflicts due to proximity, I believe. I have a comment myself, but I believe the futsal court item C, as well as the street closure for the Porch Fest, so item C and item G. I will not do it on.
Mr. Mayor, some location, property locations.
I also have a property conflict for item G.
As well as I have.
I have no conflicts tonight.
Okay, so for item G, I think we need to pull out the walnuts.
We got the nuts out.
So far, only one person out of five that can participate on that.
Okay, so we need to bring two people back, right? Or two people to be able to vote on it.
Just for the benefit of everyone, when we don't have enough people with we do not have a conflict to form a quorum to vote on an item, and through the rule of necessity under the Political Reform Act, we bring enough members back so that we can have a quorum to vote on the item. So we are doing that for item G. We'll select the two members who will vote, and then Tracy will designate the other two as non-voting on that item.
So to make it all fair and even, we will have the media give us, who will come back, odd or even?
Oh.
So we have numbers, we have number 1 through 4, so if you get a.
I have to respectfully decline because there's ethical concerns with me participating in something that I'm covering, so I appreciate it.
Alright.
He just didn't want to be in trouble for calling us off.
So I will let Gar as our newest MP. Okay. I've got two nuts in my hand. If you pick an even number nut, it'll be even. If you pick an odd number nut, it'll be odd. Which one? Okay. That's number 4. So last time I checked, I think that's an even number still. I'm not into the Common Core stuff yet, so it'll be even numbers.
Two number stays in there, right?
It is a winner's nut. I wouldn't need it because I think we've had them for the past 15 or 16 years. So I wouldn't need it.
Might get someone to donate you some new ones.
You know anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a black nut.
Walnut. I could probably get it.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Right, so
So for item G, myself and Mayor Pro Tem Callen will be voting
Along with Jesse.
along with Jesse.
no, I need to know.
So can I make a motion?
If I have a conflict, but I've seen it go has a conflict, I don't know.
I move to approve the consent calendar with all feast modifications.
We have a second.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes with the exceptions of the complex bar locations. Thank you. Okay, we have no presentations tonight. We'll move on to the discussion item, which is public hearing and consideration of proposed downtown parking master plan. Something that the parking committee has been working on for just a little over 3 years now.
Here it comes.
So we have, Councilmember Anderson has a conflict due to location, and won't be able to participate in this discussion.
I can take it.
Yeah, did we want
Hold on a second.
Well, and then that way.
Maybe what,
If we want, we can flip
we
one
can,
and
maybe we'll
two.
flip the agenda items 1 and 2, so you can stay for number 2. Well, you can stay for that discussion, and you can go. So we will go to item number 2, which is consideration of resolution 2018-53, a resolution of the City Council authorizing additional funding for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Home Program income and the Domus Blue Mountain Terrace Senior Housing Project.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Staff is going to take a three-headed approach to this agenda item. I'll start off by maybe adding some context to the information that's in the staff report, and I'll be followed up by Lisa Baker, CEO of Yolo County Housing, who acts as a technical consultant to the city. She can fill in and answer questions on the financial review. And then finally, council can receive an update from Maurice Ramirez, who is the president of Domus, and he will update you on how the project will move forward from here. So with that in mind, let me start out with some additional details on what's embedded in the staff report. First, I reference in there as part of trying to close the gap. One of the initial steps was value engineering, and we were able to work with the developer and identify about $280,000 in value engineering that was acceptable to the city, that didn't materially change the product in a detrimental way. And I wanted to give you some examples of some of the savings that constituted that $280,000 in value engineering. One that we agreed to was to reduce hallway width and unit depth by a foot each. That yielded a square footage reduction of about 3,700 square feet for the project, and that projected out to be about $200,000 in savings. So that's the vast majority of the value engineering. Another item that was significant was a metal roof versus shingles. That resulted in about $20,000 in savings. And then on the balcony railing, we switched from Trex railing to a prefabricated metal railing, and that also yielded about a $20,000 savings. So just those three items constitute about 240 of the 280,000 in savings. What we did as we were going through the value engineering scenarios was to purposely try to avoid any changes to the project that would necessitate going back to planning commission. And a large part of that was driven by we're kind of at the end of our rope with regard to the funding commitments to this project. And so adding that element of needing to go back to planning commission would have potentially jeopardized some of the funding sources that are committed to this project. We did, however, work with contract planner Dave Dowswell to ensure that the proposed changes that we were value engineering were acceptable and that and were of a nature that he could approve them ministerially, that they did not need to go back to planning commission. The next thing I'd like to run through with council is kind of give you some insights into the review of the pro forma financial information provided by Domus to ensure both the city and Domus contributed to closing the remaining gap. So originally the request was for about $600,000 in support, but that included roughly $217,000 in deferred impact fees, and the ask was for a 15-year deferral. So when we were working under that, we worked with the city attorney with our Director of Financial Management and with our city engineer to try to identify were there impact projects that were outside that 15-year window, and we could not do that. So we kind of had to take that off the table. And while these discussions were going on, we identified that there was potential for the funding shortfall to increase from 1.3 million to 1.5 million, depending on city council approval of some proposed changes to impact fees that I think are scheduled to come to council on October 16th. But regardless of whether council approves those changes in the impact fees, we needed to account for them in the projected budget shortfall that we were trying to close, the gap that we were trying to close. That is, there was, as part of your attachments, the document that Shelley prepared that show the impact fees as they exist now and what they would project to be if council approves that change in October. Next, we kind of looked at the reasonableness of the financials that were included as an attachment to the staff report, and that was led primarily by Lisa Baker, who has tremendous expertise in that area. And the one anecdotal thing that I would share with regard to the reasonableness is Yolo County Housing recently completed or is nearing completion on a project that they did with Yolo County, and it was an 80-unit complex that was completed at a cost of $31 million, roughly, which works out to be $387,000 per dwelling unit. And when you compare that to the Domus 63-unit project at a cost of roughly $24 million, that works out to be $381,000 per unit. So it's the cost increases that they're reflecting in their revised financials are very reasonable to what's going on in the construction market now. So the staff recommendation is for $700,000 in additional support, with the remainder of the gap to be closed by Domus. Additional city support would be structured as a loan from residual receipts. There will be a staff recommendation of an interest rate of 3%, but we will work with the city attorney and the developer to structure that agreement should council approve this additional funding. The loan of home funds will still need approval from the state. However, Colleen Brock, who is the grants manager for Yolo County Housing, has been in constant contact with Bob Reisted, who is our home representative at the state, at HCD. And we're led to believe that there is every probability that the state will approve this, but it still has to go through their process. And so council approval would give us the go-ahead to iron out the final details with the state and structure that into the package. The final recommendation for the additional $700,000 in financial support included funding from the city's housing trust fund. There was a sheet or an attachment to the staff report that lays out the monies that are available and the monies that we're proposing council approve for this. And in part, it reflects not being able to provide the 15-year deferral of impact fees, and also picks up a portion of the potential increase of $200,000 in impact fees for the project. We were fortunate as we were going through these discussions that we were in receipt of some rather large in lieu fee payments from the developers of Heartland. That was the final $110,000 in lieu fees from that project. And we also received the first in lieu fee payment from Stones Throw in the amount of $184,000. Those are included in the housing trust funds that are in the attachment, but that made a huge difference in the pool of money that was available for us to support this project. And at the proposed level of support, the city would still have $73,000 in housing trust funds and 18,000 in home program income after the loans to donors. Upon complete build out of Stones Throw, they will have contributed an additional 1.8 million and dedicated a 2-acre R4 parcel, with Olive Grove also adding 74,000 in inlet fees, and that will give the city approximately 2 million in housing trust funds as local leverage or funding for the next affordable project. Finally, as is referenced in the staff report, the Affordable Housing Steering Committee did unanimously recommend City Council approval of the additional funding. And with that, I'd like to invite Lisa Baker to the podium to add whatever comments she might want to add, and also answer any questions the council might have.
Good evening, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Just want to say that acting on behalf of the city, my staff and I, we have been working with the state. We're able to identify the home program income as a possibility in order to close gaps in the housing trust fund. Going through, of course, the terms and notes and working through the value of engineering, I will say not just the 31 million for West Beamer Place, which should be going online at the end of October, but we're working on a water sewer connection project between the city and the Woodland and the County of Yolo right now as the lead agency on that, and our bids actually came in 3 times higher than the engineer's estimate. So it's just really an indication of where the market is right now. Although concrete, for some strange reason, is still pricing very well, but steel and other items are not. And given the volatility in the market right now, with the tariffs and economic unknowns, we don't really expect to see prices fall in the short term. So that's kind of reality what we're looking at. This project's been a long time on the drawing board. It has raised a significant amount of capital through the state as well as from the housing authority in terms of project-based vouchers. So working within the time constraints to get it built, and also to meet the city's affordable housing requirements, because by taking housing trust fund monies as in lieu fees, we're assuming the obligation to create affordable housing. This allows that to move forward unimpeded by the city. In terms of details or some of the other items, I'm happy to answer questions.
Go on. Quick question for you, Lisa. I was at the Affordable Housing Committee to discuss all this of the liaison. You said it was a residual receipt. So it's basically, it's more of a loan.
So we are recommending that the, yes, the several reasons. Trust fund monies are not that easy to come by. So at some point you want to make sure that you're not putting them unnecessarily at risk, although they'll remain in the project. Secondarily, a loan is always better than a grant because you actually have the ability to impose conditions on the project, even if you're not going to be in the first position. This gives you a little more leverage on the project. So we would recommend that you loan it as a residual receipt loan. This essentially means that you would make a loan and you're going to be at the bottom of the heap. And it basically says that after you've satisfied all the other people's obligations, any free cash flow will go to satisfy this loan. But that in reality means essentially that that money will stay tied to the project, but you get a second bite at the apple typically at the end of its 15-year tax credit compliance period, where they may actually try to refinance it and you can then decide either to leave your money in the project or to have it cashed out. So we're working on a deal right now with the City of Davis where a portion of their loans will remain in a project and another portion, 3 of their loans, will actually be paid off as a result of their refinance. So as making a loan, it does give you some future opportunity for cash recapture, or at least to ensure the integrity of the project and the long-term value.
Comments, questions on this? I have a question for you, Dan. You mentioned you were talking about some of the value engineering things you're looking at. One of them was going to a metal roof instead of shingles. So you don't feel like that's gonna take away from the current look of the designs that?
No, and again, Lisa, who sits on the planning commission, was able to weigh in, as did Dave Dowswell, and both felt that it did not adversely affect the look of the project. Yeah, sure.
I think it's also the case that when you're not just needing to construct the project, you need for it to be viable and cash flow in the long term. So any structural components that you're putting in that have minimal maintenance requirements, such as a metal roof, will actually lend to the long-term financial viability.
So with council's permission, I'd like to invite Maurice to the podium to kind of give an update of how he sees the project moving forward from this point, assuming the council's amenable to approving the fund.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Can you guys hear me okay? Help louder? So thank you for having me here tonight. I do want to give you an update, and I do want to thank the city and the city staff for continuing to support this project. I know that it's been a marathon, but it's taken the funding, the way that the affordable housing gets put together, it's sort of cyclical, and then the commitment that you're making to the project is allowing us to leverage each dollar that the city's putting in. We're leveraging it by $10. So that's taking a little while to put together that financing, as been said. The financing included $8 million from the state, which is actually through 3 different programs. $1 million from the grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank that was received last year, $6.6 million in equity, $3.5 million on a conventional loan that in part has been facilitated through the project-based vouchers for the 26 units, and that was sponsored through Yolo County Housing Authority. So that's also been an integral part of the financing, not only for the conventional financing, but that was also integral to allow us to secure that $1 million from the Federal Home Loan Bank, because it's allowing the affordability of the units to be very deep. The other point that was mentioned, we continue to be very committed to the project. We're actually financing, and you don't hear this from developers very often, but close to $2 million that we're putting into the project to get the project completed and done. In part, that's a way to try to generate additional tax credits for the project, but it is financing that we're going to put in bridge. Again, in total, a ratio of 1 to 10 for each of the city funds. We certainly want to thank you and the city and staff for the patience. I haven't been called a Cerberus 3-headed dog before, but I guess there's a first time for that. Being that third head, I wanted just to share with you a little bit of the dynamics of the project, the financing, and sort of the pain that unfortunately we've all been sharing through the process, both in terms of construction cost increases over the last year. It's just crazy. First, you can't find labor, you can't find people to do your job. And second of all, the prices have just skyrocketed. The other challenge that the project had in the last year and a half, while the corporate tax credit decrease was very helpful for corporations, it made it less, made low-income housing tax credits less desirable, right? Before they were paying 35% taxes on their income, reducing it to 21. Well, the value of those tax credits weren't as valuable. So then that was also something that hit the project. Again, we've been able to put together the project, working very closely for the last, probably about 6 months, to do some of the value engineering, to figure out how else we could put the financing together for the project, and working with our construction company to make sure we have accurate and correct numbers. So I wanted to just give you the flow of where the project is in terms of getting it into people housed in 2020. So for the remainder of 2018, The architect was given the direction to move forward with all the changes to the plans. The plans are being resubmitted for initial plan check on 11/15. We will probably get comments, first set of comments back by 12/15. We'll resubmit, all to really get us into executable construction documents by end of first quarter. In that space, we're also re-engaging with the senior center component, and we're going to be working to resubmit the CDBG grant. So we're working with staff to secure the dollars for that, with the intent of dovetailing that with the construction of the housing. So not to say that this last year wasn't painful, but it had required a decoupling of the construction of the senior center and the housing. We're looking to put that back together so that we can get into construction on both projects relatively at the same time, so that we can at least get some economics there for the construction. So that's so for us, it's really getting it into construction by March of 2019. We have about a 15-month construction schedule, which gets us into pre-leasing the project for occupancy by January 2020. So we typically go out and pre-lease the development 3 to 4 months before we anticipate getting the certificate of occupancy. So then that gets us into having folks fully leased, having the development completed and fully leased by August 2020. So that's the milestones of the project here going forward. I mentioned about working hand in hand with the city to get us back onto the senior component and the CDBG funding. The feedback that we've received from that program is that while we were competitive before when we received the first award, the project is actually even more competitive now, given that it's more of a shovel-ready project. The fact that we've defined and set aside the space for the clinic and its own individual pad, and the fact that the healthcare clinic is actually starting construction. So that's a pretty terrific amenity for both of the other two components. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Again, I really appreciate the work and working with the staff, and I know that they've got deal fatigue on this project, but I'd like to hit the reset button and say we'll be in construction by the first quarter of next year.
Comments, questions? Yes.
Take a stab at it here. Yeah, it has been a long, very long road. And I'm glad to see that hopefully it's going to get started soon. One word of encouragement for your architect: I would do everything possible to get those drawings turned in within the next month, and then you don't have to worry about the possibility of whether or not we change our impact fees. Because the impact fees are based on when you turn in the drawings, when you submit the drawings. So that little page goes away completely if you get those things turned in before we have that meeting with that possibility looming. But I don't know how possible that is, but with all the time that's passed, I would hope those drawings are pretty close to done. But other than that, I'm just really looking forward to finally seeing this thing get built, because we've literally been talking about it for at least 7 years that I know of. Yeah, power on. I want to see it getting built.
Well, I appreciate the comment, and we will look at ways, whether it's submitting the drawings so that we can beat that deadline, or even if it means fronting out those dollars to maybe prepay the fees, but that's a hit that we don't want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Possible.
Comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody in the public that would like to speak to this? Yeah.
One other thing that Maurice didn't mention, but it ties into the CDBG senior center piece, and that is Staff is working with Domus for them to deed over the property to the senior center, which in turn would give us site control when we actually submit that application relative to the 2018 NOFA. I guess I would finish staff's portion of the presentation by reminding council has stressed repeatedly to staff how important this project is to the community. Staff certainly agrees. I think that one of the best illustrations of that is if you totaled the affordable housing obligation that the city took when it accepted in lieu fees from Winters Ranch, from Heartland, from Stones Throw, and from Olive Grove. If you accumulate all of those, we took responsibility for 63 units. And this project delivers 62 of those 63 units. So it's very critical to the community. And once again, staff recommends that that council adopt resolution 2018-53, approving the additional funding in the amount of $700,000.
Thank you. Further discussion, I'll open it up for a motion.
I'll move staff recommendation to adopt resolution number 2018-53.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? Great, motion passes unanimously. We're very much looking forward to getting this project going. Thank you. And now we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, which is the downtown parking master plan, which Councilmember Anderson has a conflict with due to proximity. Good evening. We'll step aside for that discussion.
Yes. Is that true?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think within, your property is located within 500 feet of the town business plan.
And it details also on Main Street between First and Second. So, yeah. Mr. House, I just wanted to say before you leave tonight, thank you very much for stepping up and volunteering to be on our representative from the mosquito vector board there. Thank you.
It's an honor to serve the city of Winters. And also, it was a great meeting. I was really impressed with the scope and size of the mosquito vector facility, and the staff is really top notch and very impressed. So it's very innovative as well too. And I didn't realize it was held at such high esteem throughout the state. So it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, trying to get a new presentation? Or?
I am.
Okay. We have several members of the committee here, our co-chairs, we have a couple of them here. So before we start, I just want to say thank you to all the committee members, the leaders that have kept us going, because it has been 3 years plus already. Hard to believe, but yeah. Time flies.
At least it hasn't been 7.
Right? Yeah.
Mayor and council, to kind of introduce some of the absolute all-stars that really have shown quite a bit of leadership within the business community to bring it. Obviously, Gino, Sandy, Peter had to leave.
Peter had to leave.
Peter had to leave.
Yeah, Samantha's good.
And Adina, and over the course of the time, I tried to add it up. I would guess that we've had at least 60 meetings regarding this. So lots of input. But let's go over the overall plan, because at the end of the day, this is a very solid plan that, if implemented, is going to position the city in so many ways the downtown to address parking concerns that are occurring currently, but also way to resolve them in the future. In total, there are 20 parking recommendations. I've listed those up on the slide. It calls for the establishment of the idea of a Winters Business Association to help facilitate things for the private sector. It addresses the issue with employee parking. If we look at the overall plan, it talks about that. Chris Turkovich isn't here, but Chris did an absolutely exceptional job on a survey to determine the impact of employees and where and how they park in the downtown. The big issue is always about events, the overflow parking, and what are we going to do with that. One of the very low-hanging fruits is the idea of how we strike parking. Not everybody is necessarily adept at parking their car, but if you paint some lines out there, they can do that. Zoning and development standards and some recommendations, how that will all jive with the concept of shared parking, the downtown form-based code, and the like. The idea of future parking, where are some best locations where that could happen? We talked about Main Street, and I'll get into maybe some options that the city might look at. The one thing that we know is that we've been very successful in creating a sense of arrival. When people drive into downtown Winters, the combination of the businesses and just the beauty of coming into one of the best downtowns in the area. One of the things that we do know is that if people drive up our main street, it's a magnet, they do it. But we've got to find a way for them to either find direction on where they can park or to create opportunities for them to not just simply be driving around looking for parking. We've talked about urban design. One of the things that this plan has is enforcement. The city has not done parking enforcement in a while. Enforcement is not necessarily meant to be a revenue generator. That's not the objective. The objective is to establish some rules and patterns of behavior that hopefully will alleviate the need for constant enforcement. We talk about alternative fuel vehicle parking, electric vehicle parking. We've already started doing that at the community center. It can be done in other places within the downtown. We talked about accessible parking. This plan has the availability for numerous things. How we treat loading and unloading. The idea of valet parking is in here. The idea of remote parking is in here. The idea of parking structures. The plan does not include a parking structure, but what it does do is it identifies how that type of structure could happen. It talks about the idea of parking revenue. The plan does not include the idea of parking meters and trying to generate revenue that way, at least not yet. It's talked about in the plan, but I think universally and unequivocally, the idea of parking meters, we will have one parking meter in downtown. We will leave it at that one. The idea of residential and commercial conflicts, something that some of us have heard quite a bit about. I put enforcement in there twice just because we have to. And the EV parking because we're just that environmental. I guess since the governor is just claiming that from climate. This is the actual plan that was put together, and I can't stress enough how much of a collaboration this was. The members of the parking committee, we hired a consultant, Kimberly Horn, who came in and helped more so in the formatting and some of the interpretation of much of the data that was out there. The plan actually devolves, the first part of it is a table that has mostly, this is the implementation document. It lists 13 different goals that are listed, and then it has both recommendations, implementation programs, and dates on them. And I can tell you that from the city staff perspective, we're ready. We're ready to do the aspects of the implementation of this, and I will describe that in a minute. Peter's left. He was looking all cleaned up and good, and obviously had a hot day. But I think one of the most important things that we did was bring a very empirical approach to overall analysis. And this chart is the best example. There are a number of people in this room that all participated in the parking counts that we did throughout the downtown. This shows you a very busy Friday. Everything in blue is parking, green is availability, and you can see kind of a climb. In the morning, not very much, going all the way up until the evening, and I think we stopped at 9 o'clock. As far as the numbers that we crunched. In total, we collected, when we added Russell Street in, over 30,000 pieces of data to count this. One of the things that we know, we've identified the time of day. On the bottom, CMS stands for Central Main Street, all the way going to the far right, which is the community center. We know when and where people are parking and where we see the overall demand. This slide gives you the occupancy by the overall time period. We know that some people park in some locations in the morning, and we know that some of them park in the evening. Probably one of the best examples, there's WAB, West Abbey, perfect definition, right? So West Abbey, what do we know? We know that street has a tremendous amount of turnover. Everybody's parking there during the day. But nobody parks there at night. Why? Because the lighting there is horrible. It's dark. And it gave, as you look at the overall master plan, the idea of enhancing lighting and in the environment that people go into, this answered many questions because everything that you see is within a 1 block area. If you go down 2nd Street, we've always viewed the core as being that central part of Main Street, where we have the greatest amount of commerce and people visiting. So many of the recommendations are driven based on empirical data and just general observations that work. This is actually we took this is a 3-month period of time where we went and crunched all the data. One is Kimley Horn analyzed our overall parking occupancy. We were trying to figure out, okay, what days of the week do we have the highest demand? When are those peak times? We were trying to find that sweet spot of, gosh, if we're going to invest in parking, where and why do we do it? And I thought that this data was just tremendous that we provided. There are 2 key sheets that have mapped the overall downtown, and you can't necessarily see, but this is the 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. periods. Blue are the parking lots, red is the on-street parking, but it gives you a very good sense of the overall data analysis that we did. That's the morning data, and this is the evening data. The report is the report. I know that we've actually had 2 workshops in the development of the report. We had a workshop on probably 95% of what went into the report, where we had the consultant come and speak. Okay, so let's talk about implementation. And from the city staff perspective, or I know from the committee, it's critical that we get off to a very ambitious start on things. So what do we have coming down the pipe not necessarily in any particular order. Across the street from City Hall, there's going to be a 38 space parking lot that goes in. There's a perspective. There are 41 parking spaces in Central Main Street. So in essence, we're almost doubling the amount of parking within the proximity of the core area. Notwithstanding, obviously, we've got that hotel, that parking lot will support the hotel. We got that. But it as you look at a combination of things, of restriping, the addition of that hotel, enhanced lighting. One thing about West Abbey Street, you saw just nobody was parking there in the evening time. Is that hotel is there, and the street lighting is installed. It's going to change the whole dynamic of that entire area. Second thing on the list is restriping. We are going to go and we are going to restripe and repaint all of the parking spaces in downtown. We're going to get on it almost immediately. Eric's here, and literally we've already been talking about it. This thing's approved. We're going to get out there and get on it. It's the lowest hanging fruit, but one of the critical elements is that what we all know from everybody who was out camping parking spaces. What do we know? We know that people don't know how to park their car very quickly. That's what we know. And the ability of actually putting lines out there so that people know where to park is critical. We also know that many of the spaces that we have in some critical areas, especially along Railroad, some of the parallel parking spaces are inordinately wide and long. They just are. The standard is somewhere 18 to 20 feet, and all of our spaces are 24 feet. So there's some parking out there for folks on things. The restriping is going to occur for the entire downtown within a 1/4 mile radius of Main and Railroad. So this thing's going to go all the way to Grant Avenue on things. Critical element is the idea of the formation of the Winters Business Association. Probably the most important, because the city is going to get on the things that we do. But in order to maximize the overall experience for their employees and their customers, it'll be critical that property owners and the business owners get on board with this. So what are we going to do? The notification. We will send every single property owner and business owner a hard copy of this plan. They're going to get that. We will schedule the meetings. We are going to get sample bylaws. We will put together a section of the city's website for them to use as resources on things. We will give them introduction to the California Downtown Association that is the main professional organization that supports organizations like the Winters Business Association. And we literally are going to give them the names of some of the top business associations for what they do. This is really going to be leading a horse to water thing. We're going to build a huge pool for the horse to drink from. And we'll provide lots of resources and amenities to help them do it. But at the end of the day, we need the downtown business owners and the property owners to step up. Very critical to the whole deal. Signage, we will get on the overall signage for the downtown. We were kicking it around today. Right now, there's kind of a mishmash of times throughout the key area, and I'm going to show you the overall layout for the downtown. Probably the best option, and just kind of being the devil's advocate, if we go back to the times when things are peaking, we don't want people to cheat. One of the key aspects will be the discipline of where employee parking goes. Employee parking is a very critical element of of all this. So probably the parking will be from 8 o'clock in the morning to probably about 6 o'clock in the evening. If, and we were chatting a little bit about that today. 8 to 6, 2-hour parking. Also the idea of establishing some 30-minute zones. The idea of enforcement. Talked with the chief, he's completely up for it. As far as when we're gonna get out and actually do the enforcement. Enforcement will be very low tech. Chalk and a stick for time periods. Are we gonna tell people when we're doing it? We aren't gonna tell people when we're doing it. We're gonna do it within the parking periods that we have. But we'll put together that enforcement program. And again, aiding in the formation of the Winters Business Association is absolutely critical. Some maps that I've included in here. This is the existing layout, and going kind of diagonally from top to bottom, that's Railroad Avenue in the middle. The orange stripes is our Main Street. You'll see a little yellow stripe there, that is First Street. You'll see everything in orange on that list is 8 to 5, 2-hour parking under existing. Same thing for Main Street. The yellow is 30-minute parking, and that's in front of City Hall. Stuff that is in red is basically there's no regulation on any of that parking. So one of the first options that we were looking at is just uniformity, which was the idea of just going to 2-hour parking throughout the entire downtown. At the bottom, you'll see Russell Street, which is basically residential zone parking there. And then if you look where East Abbey is, in this area, this is East Abbey. The reality of East Abbey is that it really is an extension of the Railroad Avenue parking lot. So anybody parking out there, probably no regulation on things. That would give uniformity. Some of the biggest difference is here on First Street. I guess we called that South First Street, where we would go from no parking regulation currently to moving that to 2-hour parking regulation. In the parking lots that are all in blue, there's no regulation. You go and you park there all day long. And at the end of the day, that's one of the key goals, is to drive people into the parking lots. One option that I'd like to bring up, and it's included in the report, but this is an example of an option that is out there. And that's the idea of supporting many of our retail businesses. The idea of people that want to come in and do quick business and then get in their car and leave. They aren't there for a couple of hours. They only want to be there for a couple of minutes. So on this slide, if you look, and I'll try and do it with this pointer, this is in front of Eagle Drive. This is in front of Tienda, which also supports where the bank is. This is in front of Ace Hardware Store. This is in front of Steady Eddie's. And this is in front of the new hotel. The idea there would be that we would probably move to some type of 30-minute parking restriction for those locations. The reason is people going in now, people who are coming to check into the hotel, the idea that they can pop into the 30-minute parking, get their reservation, and be told where they can go and park as they're registering. But the idea is not necessarily special treatment, it's just recognizing what these businesses are. somebody popping in to get a prescription, somebody popping in to drop something off at the bank, somebody dropping in to Ace Hardware for a short period, or somebody buying a coffee. Really quick transactions in and out. That gives convenience. One of the things that we'll need to do to actually get to enforcement is going to involve, number one, I'd like to get some feedback from the council tonight. We aren't adopting parking times tonight. That will have to be brought back. But I'd like to get some direction from the council as far as which of the options. If you go to the one where it's just uniform, it's 2 hours, or if the council is willing to entertain the idea of some of the more 30-minute zones. In what I'm showing you here, it would be 15 spaces out of over 500 spaces in the downtown. So it's actually a very small number of parking.
And you're talking about that, the 30-minute thing being between the hours of 8 and 6.
Correct. Correct.
But I like that option.
I like it too. It's my favorite option.
Because I think it helps out places like Ace Hardware and the drugstore and, yeah, I like that.
I like the option too, but I think we need to think about the ones in front of the Healy Drug, because they do have their own parking lot already, where they have spaces in there where people go in and out, so.
That's true, but I spend a lot of time circling Eagle Drug for parking space because people, it takes a while to get line there, especially if there's, big lines.
Yeah.
And the bank spills over to that location also.
Completely agree with Eagle having their own parking, but I also look at the benefit for across the street. And you're not going to use your haircut in 30 minutes. But not really haircut. Is we kind of look at First and Main, the reality there, you've got many businesses. You've got Ace, you've got El Pueblo, you've got the Chinese Ocean restaurant across the street. You've got various things going on there. Even the ability to pop over and just get pizza. I think hopefully they reopen. But anyway, out of over 500 spaces, this would represent 15 of those. So it's a very low percentage on everything.
I have another question on that map. So you have the darker orange on Russell Street, residential.
Yep.
You might think about doing that same thing on First Street between Abbey and Edwards, down over here. Because once that hotel goes in, if those aren't marked as residential parking, people are going to be parking in front of all the residences right over here down the street from us.
Okay. Okay. Well, let us work that out.
Are you suggesting no restrictions or parking?
Residential
Nice.
signage that says residential parking, which is what we're talking about here on Russell Street.
Okay. Getting direction on this, we can bring back the options on things. I think that parking restrictions have to be done by ordinance, so we'll do that. So essentially, in conclusion, staff is present. There's one correction in there. Under enforcement, it says that we would start in January of 2020, and then if you go back and into the document, there's other discussions regarding enforcement that is 2019. I will tell you that it's 2019. We're looking to move on this stuff.
I think there's another correction on page 31. It says staff has recommended that the planning commission hold a public hearing.
Yeah.
I think you mean city council.
Yeah. What is the city council?
That's on the second paragraph on page 31 or page 2 of the report of the downtown parking district.
See, that means that word is not perfect.
We didn't find it all.
It didn't find out.
It's actually on page 2 of the staff report.
Yeah.
2 places.
So, So if you were the planning commission, I would suggest you get a extension to city council. I also recommend.
Get Lisa Baker.
Good. So with that, for tonight, we're asking that you hold a public hearing, receive any additional input on this, provide any direction, and at the end of this, staff is recommending the adoption of resolution 2855, adopting the plan.
Questions before I open the public hearing? All right, I will open the public hearing at 7:55.
Go first.
Hi, Gino Mediotti. Just wanted to encourage you to approve this. It has been 3 years of meetings, and I think it's time to move forward with some action and get moving forward with this. Also, I would like to encourage you to approve the 30-minute spots strategically placed throughout downtown. It would be benefit to many of our businesses. Thanks.
Thank you.
Question for Gino. Gino, it seems that the Winners Business Association is a key component to success of the downtown parking plan. And I was wondering if you had a feel for how business owners are, feeling about it.
I think there's already some business managers and owners already working towards that already at this time. There's been some manager meetings downtown, I heard, and they are ready to move forward and doing business downtown.
It just seems crucial that they have skin in the game.
They are very willing, it sounds like. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks for all your time.
Dedicate our lives. Sandy Vickery, and yes, Gino, thank you and Gino drove here from Vacaville just to be here tonight. It's his day off, so.
All the way from
Thank you, Gino.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm sorry, Peter couldn't be here. Peter had out of town guests. He came to
I was wondering
bring
when
us
I
at
saw you.
6:30 and he had to leave, so he was being a good host. John and I discussed that time zone between 8 and 5 and 8 and 6. And so I'm gonna give you my 2 cents worth on that. I currently down here we are 8 to 5, we don't enforce that. I know in any other cities, and many other, including Davis, which I go to often, it's till 6 o'clock. And what I had heard happens in some cities that have it, until 5. Someone will park at 3 and then they're home free. They can stay there till 5 or they can stay there till 6 or whenever. And if you looked at the graph, which John and I did today, and it shows that 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon time period is critical for parking. So by moving that from 4 to 6, we're not letting people stay there for, come at 3 and stay there for 2 hours. And I'm hoping that will generate a turnover of the parking spaces during that time frame. And that's really the reason behind that. I know you're not making a decision. I'm just starting to plant that seed because you're probably going to hear from me harp on that same thing again. And I love the fact that John had put in these little 3, each yellow line does represent 3 parking spaces. And I think that those are very strategically spaced. And it is a good plan, and thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Karen? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:58. Comments?
Yeah, I'll make a couple.
Yes.
First off, thanks to Gino and Sandy and Peter and all the other core group that's endured 3 years of meetings over this. I know I attended a lot of them the first year and a half, I think all of them the first year and a half at least, and then that was taken over by Bill, right? He was already there. Yeah, you were there the whole time. But anyway, I know it's been a long road and there's been a lot of time and energy put into this and a lot of effort. Peter's been absolutely amazing with the stats and the numbers, and he's better than a darn consultant when it comes to all that. The stats part, he's amazing. But I think it's just time to get it moving, and the sooner the better. And, I'm hoping we can see this striping and the signage by the first of the year so we can start the enforcement early next year. And, it'll just be good to see things actually start happening with this. And I'm looking forward to it, and I definitely support it.
I have some comments. I want to applaud you for including the bike facilities. I think inclusion of bike facilities is really important for the city of Winters. I think the striping is critical. I also think the identification of the derelict cars in areas is crucial to having more parking. And as an aside, I think derelict cars throughout Winters, including 2 to 3 per driveway in my side of town, at least, is something that we eventually want to talk about. But as an aside, I think that you guys have done a great amount of work. I think that everybody has skin in the game on this, every business and everybody that lives here and everybody that visits here. And lastly, I just want to say I support the option for 30-minute yellow zones. 15 out of 500 spaces is not a lot, and I support the 8 to 6 hours, not 8 to 5, just for the reasons that you stated.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've spent, I think I made it to almost all those 60+ meetings except for a couple, so.
Yep.
I was on there as part of the planning commission as well as council, and I saw how much time business owners, community members, residents that came and gave their time and helped us to prepare this. Even though it took a long time, I think in the end it's going to be worth it. I mean, one of the main reasons that this thing came up was the concern by some of our downtown business owners as well as residents of Winters when they saw the hotel. The hotel was approved, and the comment was, we're letting them build a hotel with no parking. I've heard that a lot, and that was my concern as well when we approved the hotel. And we say we're adding 38 spaces across the street, but actually we have spaces there to begin with that are currently being used as a staging area. We're not really adding that, but anyway, aside from that, the hotel is providing parking on that lot as well as on the street and in the lot across Railroad over there. So there will be parking, but there is going to be an impact once they're up and running and they're full. I mean, and that's what we're hoping. We want to have people coming downtown. We say it's a parking problem, but it's actually it's a good problem to have that many people coming to town and wanting to be here in Winters. So there's a lot of good information in this report. One of the big ones is, like you said, the formation of the Winters Business Association. We've got to get the businesses involved in that, and at some point that will also involve the property owners and potentially looking at some type of an assessment to pay for future parking, whatever that might be, whether it's a structure, parking lots, whatever it might be in the future. We're going to need some money to do all that. I think the employee parking is a key thing as well, to get employees from parking on the spaces, the most sought after spaces on Main Street and close by, getting them to park in the remote lots out, say, to the side of the community center. And that's going to also require the business owners to come together to talk to their employees and say, look, this is where we got to do it. We got to park out there. The time parking and the enforcement of that. And I know we've had the chief come to some of our parking meetings and discuss that with us, and he's very open to helping us out with the enforcement on that. So it was good to hear that. We look forward to that helping to have more parking spaces available. I do like the idea of the 30-minute spots that you have spread out through there. I know that wasn't something in our original report, but that is a good addition. The striping, yeah, the sooner we can get that striping going, Eric, the better. Yeah, you're on it. I know in here it says the deadline on one of those was the summer of 2018. So
Yeah.
Like 3 more days. And the budget.
We're gonna do it tonight.
I know you'll be all over it. Lighting as well. The lighting is a crucial thing that I know this is talking about coming up with a lighting plan. We just did some lighting improvements. We put all our LEDs in. And part of that, I think there were some areas that were identified that maybe need more lights. Signage and wayfinding is key things so people can find their way to where the parking lots are. We have the community center parking lot, and a lot of people don't seem to find it. They'll drive around the surface streets and they can't find where the lot is, so getting some better signage. Accessible parking, one of the recommendations is that we add more of that. One of the things that I was hoping would come out of this report from the consultant would be some direction on what we should do on in-lieu fees, as we have developers come into town that want to build new buildings. If we're not ready to put up a parking structure or a parking lot, we need to revisit our in-lieu fees. Our current in-lieu fees are very old and very low. And I mean, before when we were looking for the consultants, I looked at parking studies from other areas that consultants have done, and some of those have some very detailed recommendations on what in-lieu fees, how much they should be, and that type of thing. So that's something that I think we should look into sooner rather than later. We're going to have cost estimates from building the parking lot across the street, so we'll have a really good idea what it costs per space to put in a parking lot, a surface parking lot. So I think looking into that. Also, the electric vehicle parking. We added the charging station earlier this year, and it has the option of having people pay for their charging, which I think we should bring that back as well, because we were talking about doing that for a year for free, but I'm not sure how long that's been in. It probably hasn't been a year yet, but time passes like that. But I think that we should look at having people pay for the parking or the charging in those spaces there, and even think about replacing the free. We have one charger that doesn't have the capability of people to pay for the charging, so I think we need to revisit that as well. So, but overall, I think I'm so glad that we finally got to this point where we have a final plan. I just want to make sure that this isn't something that, okay, we have a plan, it's on paper, and we put it in the books and, okay, we did it. No, I want to make sure that we follow through on all the recommendations in here, the deadlines that we have on there, that we bring it back to the council for, just to revisit it. Even if it's every 6 months or so, just to say, okay, what have we got done and what's coming up next, what's the timeline. Overall, great job, everybody that worked on this.
I want to add one more small thing that we talked about before that didn't get brought up tonight, is from Abby going out to Grant. We've talked more than once about, the lighting on that section, because people just don't utilize that area. And one of the things we talked about is there is some lights there, but it just doesn't work well because of the trees. And we talked about the raising of the canopy of those trees to help with the lighting in that section, to hopefully encourage people to park up, a little further out down railroad there. So when Eric's guys are out there striking, maybe they can have some pruners with them too. Work on the trees and hopefully help that section out in more ways than one, as far as encouraging people to park on down railroad.
I also wanted to thank you, John, not only for your direction on this. You've done a great job. So are we ready for motion?
I have no more comments from the council. We're ready for a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution 2018-55, the resolution of the City of Winters City Council adopting the downtown Winters parking master plan.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, none. Passed unanimously. Thank you all.
Take the trucks out there with the paint.
Make some pitch for it.
Wade guys will be on it in the morning.
All right, last thing is the city manager's report.
Just really quickly, I think a lot of us, last week was a really good week, both legally and environmentally. With some of the things that have gone down regarding phase 3 and the NAPWA projects out on Cootie Creek. I know a number of us have had a chance to get down and see that project, and it's an amazing project. And it's something that is going to immensely benefit, you know, the final idea, the final concept of getting what was once just a pipe dream of a project completed, that has gone through, restored the creek, created accessibility and pathways, and most importantly, enhancing the environment. We are very blessed to have many of the stakeholders, so many of our residents, the members of our Winters Creek Committee that have worked on this, the council, the Lower Creek Coordinating Committee, our partners with both the U.S. and California Fish and Wildlife Services that helped us. It's an amazing project. Personally, I'm just in awe of it. There are some people that you think big on something, and this is a big deal. There's nobody else out there doing this type of ecological restoration, and it's going to take a couple of years for everything to grow in, get over it. The idea that we can get the trees in, see the development of it. I always tell everybody when you build a park, come back in 3 years. Are we going to have to get out there and get the plantings in, get the trees in? Yes, we are. It's going to take a little bit of time, but 10 years from now, as people are walking under, many of the trees that we've preserved, there's some beautiful oak trees, cottonwood trees. There's so many different things now. I'm just, it'll be exciting as these things are finished. It looks like they're moving off of the heavy equipment into phase 3 section. They're moving east to get the NACWA part of the project going. On the staff, I can't say enough for Carol. Carol has brought a tremendous amount of vision and commitment to the overall project. And Carol's overall tenacity. Everybody is kept with this thing. And as we look at the North Bank Trail, as we look at each one of the different phases, none of these have been easy. They've all been, there's been a certain amount of legal gamesmanship that has been foisted upon us by some folks, but we've kept at it. And I think the legacy for many people, I know for Carol's legacy, she's our environmental services manager. She's in charge of doing all the environmental stuff, and I think very few people can hang their hat on the idea that look what I've actually done to improve the environment for my community. Sam is one of that. For all the people that are worried about the beavers and the otters and the turtles and all that stuff, they're all still there. They're going to have a better environment to go. I think the highlight will be going down and seeing otter eating salmon on the side of the thing. I guess that's the day that we declare victory on everything. Hopefully they don't mention on the turtles too. But, yeah. Anyway, pretty awesome week. I think that the past couple of days, I hope some of the legal stuff will calm down a bit, and we get ready to move on. So that's my report.
Not to diminish the gravity or importance of anything that you had to say, but I wanted to go back to something else. I know your Councilman Anderson said that as part of the Transportation Committee, they voted, I think he said unanimously no on 6. And if there's a chance for this to come to council so that we can also take a vote on it, I believe we need to protect our transportation dollars. I think it's important for public safety, for walkability, for livability in the city of Winters. I'd like to see that item come back to us, no on six.
Okay. Hey,
Thank you.
I actually got the sample proclamation on this thing on Thursday of last week, so they changed it. So we'll bring it back on the second.
Okay. And at that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:15. Thank you.
Hey, Ken,
Hey,
you and I.
yeah, there you go.
I'm not on the Winter Senior Foundation board, but I just want to remind you guys that there's a fundraiser this Thursday.
Youth by car in September 20th.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Percentage of your food is going to the foundation, so it's low.
I don't want to say how many times. Yay! I'll try to remember.
I think everything on Earth
Oh,
is
I
happening.
love it. I want one.
Thursday.
Wherever you got it, I want.
Everything.
I know, but it's so easy to those workers. Yes. It's amazing. These
So do
work.
you think you could give me something?
You just have
Yeah.
the best, I just wanted to tell you that, and you're fine, you already know.
Yeah, I was gonna go.
I'm,
Good.
you know,
I'm good.
That's one of the rooms here. This Friday, it's at 9 AM, only two people, I could only bring two people.
Good for you, that's fine. I read it.
But I'm pretty cool. I
That's cool.
don't want.
So,
It's like.
my sister-in-law Debbie,
Yeah.
did her final chemo
Yeah.
last Friday.
You have to have more
You gotta
people to
sign the-
regulation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sign the
Wow.
notary book.
And my niece,
Wow.
she finished hers this week too.
Yeah, she, I guess they're like some pills or something like that. She's holding.
Oh, she has to take, yeah. No, I want,
I
they
probably
they
got a little
told
too
me
much
to do
money.
it.
But, you know.
So,
I'll be done Wednesday.
anyway, yeah, hey,
I'm
you met Debbie?
Yeah, yeah,
She's a carbon, yeah.
yeah.
carbon copy, yeah.
Yeah.
She
I
doesn't,
get some training.
she is in my exercise class and she kicks butt.
Oh, I don't have cancer, they took it out.
Oh, took it out.
I don't know what they're doing.
Whatever you're going through, she kicks butt. It's like, really, Kathy? Really? It's unbelievable. So the reservation that we got is for 5:15, but I know he won't be in town by then.
Oh, yeah.
On Thursday.
All right.
Thank you. I just wanted
So is she
to-
gonna, thank you. Good night. Is she gonna come out after?
Yeah, they're coming up next weekend. Her hair's coming in is white gray as you could ever imagine.
Look at mom.
And so anyway, she posted a first picture without a wig.
It's huge.
So there she is, and she's looking great.
Yeah.
It's as white gray as you could ever imagine. And so I typed on her Facebook thing, I go,
Oh.
I heard that your hair changes color.